Check. This is working. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is July 15th, 2021, and today on the show we have Donna Francart. Did I say that right, Francart?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Today we've got Donna Francart on the show. For nearly 9 years, Donna was a deputy coroner who worked medicolegal legal death investigation. How do you say that?
Medicolegal Death Investigations.
Right.
It's a tough one.
I was like, I've never even seen this word before. Which are those involving suspicious, violent, unexplained, or unexpected deaths. Lacking access to structured debriefings, Francart turned to journaling as a way of privately unpacking the profound grief she faced and preserving her own mental well-being. As she did, she found herself in a conundrum of perplexing relationships with both the living and the dead. With her book, I've Seen Dead People, she shares her unfiltered thoughts and emotions as she navigates a world most of us cannot imagine, a world Francart was drawn to out of a genuine desire to help others during their darkest hours. Donna, thanks so much for joining us today on Conflict Radio. How are you?
Oh, thanks, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. How are you doing?
You know, not too bad. We've I guess they're saying I'm really low, so let me turn up my volume a little bit here. How's the sound? How's the sound, guys? So we sound okay? Volume. They're saying. Volume. Is my mic working? Tap. Let me see here. What's going on? Why is my volume so low? Oh, there we go. I think that worked. It just clicked in, didn't it? All right. Well, hopefully you guys all got my little intro there. I guess I don't know what the problem with the audio was there. How's that? I turned it up a little bit more. All right. So let's talk about this. Well, first off, a deputy coroner. You're not the actual coroner, right? You're a deputy coroner. Can you explain to us the politics of all of that and how that works?
Sure, absolutely. The difference between a coroner and a deputy coroner. A coroner is an elected official. A deputy coroner is hired and sworn in. So we do almost everything that the coroner does. We're representing the coroner in the county. When there is a death, an unexpected or suspicious or unwitnessed death, we, as in either deputy coroner or coroner, so a coroner will have a team of deputy coroners that go out in the field, and then they do the death investigations. And medical legal death investigations would be the medical end of it and the legal. Okay, so we are paged out. We go to the scene. Now, the scene is considered a crime scene until the investigation has been completed to rule out that there's been any foul play. And I'm going to refer to a deputy coroner because that was what I was. Once the deputy coroner arrives on scene, we will pronounce the time of death, we'll examine the body, draw fluids for toxicology, which would be either blood, urine, or vitreous, and vitreous is from the eye. We would determine whether we're going to order an autopsy. We would take photos, of course, notify the family. Now, the body is under the possession of the coroner or the deputy coroner. The crime scene would be under the control of police, law enforcement. And so in unison as a team, we would work through the investigation. The coroner or deputy coroner would also bag and tag the body, of course, set up for transport of the body to either the morgue for the autopsy or to the funeral home. We would also go to many of the autopsies, and then the forensic pathologist is the one that does the actual autopsy. So we as coroners would be not at the scene, but we would be at the morgue as the autopsy is being performed, taking notes, and then we would be there to get the final determination of what the cause of death was. We would also sign death certificates, sign cremation authorizations, start the procedure or the protocol of having any tissue donors, or if there's going to be organ procurement, organ donation. And this would be, of course, if somebody is at the hospital and they are still alive, then we would set up for the organ procurement.
Oh, you
And
guys
so-
do
and there-
that? That's the coroner's. That's the deputy coroner's job for the organs.
Yes. Well, going through, speaking with the family about arranging and setting up and talking to organ procurement about what organs would be donated, and then they go through the medical history of the patient to make sure that they are qualified and their organs are qualified to be donated.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting. My wife, we moved to we're in Huntsville, Alabama. And we moved here, I guess, about 4 years ago. And my wife was talking to somebody, and she was saying that she wanted to run for coroner because in I guess the Constitution of Alabama, you just vote in a coroner. You only have to have a high school diploma.
But there are some states and some counties that you don't have to have medical or law background, law enforcement background. And the county that I worked in, it was not required to have that. Now, the coroner that we had in the county that I worked in, he was retired law enforcement. And then the deputy coroners, there was one, all of us were part-time. And so we had other jobs. My background was always in corporate travel. I had some medical background as far as I had a clinical, a nurse's aide certification. I worked as a medical assistant for a couple of nephrologists, they specialize in diabetes and kidney. And then I also worked at one of the local hospitals as a clinical technician, which was basically just rooming patients. And so it was not a lot of medical background. I went through a divorce in the early 2000s, and we had two younger sons, and they were going to be with their dad every other weekend. So at that point in time, I thought, what can I do that is going to be constructive? Maybe I'd like to do something to help the community. And I'd heard of a program, a team of people that were volunteers that worked with 5 police departments in the area. And it was only on a volunteer basis. And so any calls that ranged anything from domestic dispute to death, we would be paged out if we were available. We'd go on the call. And then we were there more for emotional assistance for the families or the loved ones involved. So if they were so distraught over whatever was going on, we might help them with making phone calls, looking up phone numbers, making coffee, getting cool compresses, or giving teddy bears to the children. And through the crisis response team, and I'm condensing this, I had to go through a panel of police officers that interviewed me, and then there were several months of training before I was accepted. But through being a VCR, victim crisis responder, I was getting to know, of course, the coroners and some of the officers. And one of the coroners in this particular county we struck up a conversation, and he had complimented me on how I was handling the cases, the people, the families, loved ones. And it seemed like many of the calls that involved death, I was always one that was asked if I would help to physically remove the body, the decedent, when there was a death. And so, as I'd said then, that I was closer to, I was watching the investigation. It was just fascinating. I was intrigued. I was a little frightened because I never really was one that was into death and spirits and all of that. I get scared easily, but I was intrigued by it and I wanted to help. And so the coroner at that point in time was not looking for any deputies. And I said to him, well, if you ever consider hiring on any more, I'd be very interested. And so about 9 or 10 months later, I did get the call from him. He was considering hiring another deputy, but he wanted me to follow him on cases, and then he would see how I handled the investigations, and then he would be training me along the way. And at that point, he would decide whether I'd be a good fit, which after another 9 or 10 months, then he did offer me the position, and I was sworn in. But you're right, I was going to say the other deputies, one was also, he worked for the fire department, he's actually a battalion chief. Another deputy was a deputy coroner in 2 counties and a paramedic. and then another deputy was a chaplain. So we all had several jobs, but most of them did have a medical background.
All right. And I always found that interesting. You know, that I mean, Conflict Radio can run for coroner, not deputy coroner, because they pay attention to who they hire. Obviously, if I'm a coroner and I have just a high school diploma and I just got voted in because guess what? Everybody just knows who I am in that town. I mean, that's a decent paying job, and you kind of get the job just by politics, right?
Well, without starting a lot of, animosity amongst people, but I would say yes. I would think depends on how many people know you, your reputation.
Yeah.
But doesn't have to be what you know as far as any certification or training. I do agree with that.
All right. So let's get into kind of unpack this a little bit and take us to your first case. What do you remember your first one?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I have that in the book. It was unbelievable. It was quite the rude awakening. Obviously, I knew being a deputy coroner, I was going to be working with death, right?
Yeah.
But the first call, it happened to be in February, and there was a snowstorm that night. I was working full-time during the week as in the travel business, and then on the weekends I would pick up the shifts as a deputy coroner. And so it was one evening I was paid first one, and my boss, the coroner, had called me and said, okay, we've got a call, gave the information, the address. It was a suicide. And so the adrenaline's rushing, right? It's like, oh my God, I wonder, how is this going to be? And what am I going to see? I mean, obviously we see the shows and the movies on the big screen or on TV. And I'm telling you, even though that's gory and it can get you on the edge of your seat, it's nothing compared to being actually on a death scene, being surrounded by death, feeling it, smelling it, hearing it, just being in there. And so as I'm on my way to this location, I had a flat tire. It's like, oh my God, it's snow. We've got a blizzard out there. I'm sitting on the side of the highway with a flat tire. I called, I'm in a panic, and it's like, I just got a flat tire. I'm not going to be able to be there within X amount of time. So that's okay. We'll wait for you. I'm thinking, how can you wait? But of course, obviously, the coroner or the deputy coroner has control of the scene. And what I mean by that is that the coroner or the deputy coroner has to pronounce the time of death.
You're fluctuating. First. You're fluctuating in and out. Like sometimes your volume gets really low. I don't know. Like do you know?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure why.
It sounds good now, and then sometimes you'll get on a tangent and it'll get really low, like I can barely hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I don't know if you're doing something or.
It might have been that I moved a little bit. I apologize. Where did it cut off where were we at?
I don't know. It could just be the internet or something too. I mean, there's no telling.
Well,
I can tell you if it happens.
I'm not sure how much you heard. Maybe it's the spirits. No. So I was on my way to this call. I had a flat tire. They said they'd wait for me. I had that taken care of. I arrived at the home. It was a suicide. It was a gentleman that had gone through a divorce. He was very distraught, and he just didn't see any light at the end of the tunnels. So there was a little crawl space in his bedroom, and he'd gone down into that crawl space with a high-powered rifle and shot his head off, blew his head off. So by the time I had gotten there,
so you have to go down into the crawl space where the body is. Or did they pull it out, or how does that work? They don't touch anything, do they?
Pardon me?
They don't touch anything. Like they don't disturb the scene at all until you get there.
Well, the thing is, because my boss, the coroner, was there. Now, had I not had the flat tire, I would have been with him in that crawl space pulling the body out. Okay. But because, they were waiting for me, and I, of course, not being there, he would have been one with, I'm sure, the help of others, the police to pull this person out of the crawl space. But yes, we've pulled bodies out of wreckage, out of rivers. So yeah, we do that. So by the time I'd gotten there, they did have the gentleman, the decedent, on the floor in the living room. And when I opened the door, and they must have all known that this was going to be my first. I'm sure my boss had told them, who they were waiting for. And when I opened the door, and this is a kind of a goofy comparison, but it's the only thing I could think of, was that, like the movie The Wizard of Oz, when the house is up in the air and it's spinning around and everything is in black and white, and then the house lands, and then Dorothy opens the door, and everything is in vibrant colors. Well, for me, it was the opposite. I'm driving there. I felt like everything was in color, life around me. And I opened that door and everything stood still. Everything was black and white. Everything stood still. My brain, what I was looking at, could not grasp what I was seeing. It was only for a matter of seconds, and then everything came back to, and all I could say was, oh my God. I mean, it was just so surreal, but you get into this mindset that you're so focused, you never lose sight of the fact that it's someone's loved one. It's a human being, and you're going to continue to treat them with dignity and respect. But you focus on this investigation. You have to push your emotions to the side in order to concentrate on, what you're doing. And then once the investigation has been completed, then for me, then the emotions would start rushing in.
Okay. Let me just give a shout out here real quick to everybody who's listening to the show. I see Jake Carr here, Barry's here, the Happy Plague Doctor, Paul Beska, how you doing? I tracked your package, Paul, and apparently it just left Miami not too long ago. I don't know. I mean, it seemed like your package got to me really fast, and mine's just like on a snail crawl out to you. But I guess it's finally through customs and on its way. It's probably somewhere on a boat in the ocean right now. Let's see. We've got TK422. How you doing? Mr. Fox, Chuck Bam, Hugh Godarn is here. All of the regulars, man, you guys are in here for every show. Really do appreciate it. Ravnos Raven is here. Ian, myself. I see Pink Chicken, so Blue Chicken's probably in the house somewhere. I think. I haven't seen him yet. As I scroll here, let me see. Dip, Blue Chicken's here. Andy Tesh. I saw Cisco Murdoch from the Paranormal Portal podcast. She's here. That's a great show if you guys want to check that out. So I just want to let you guys know that I am seeing your questions here, but I'll let you know when it's question time. Right now, we just want to get into some of these stories. So let me ask you this. You get to, I mean, is it up to you, or do you have investigators that, what's your job? Just to certify that they're dead, to certify who they are? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you actually try to confirm how they die? You have to talk to investigators to confirm their cause of death?
Our responsibility is that, number one, we have to pronounce the time of death. Now, what happens is on the crime, and they're all crimes, right, until the investigation is completed, we pronounce the time of death, we check over the body. If we suspect that there's any foul play, whether it's markings on the body, the position of the body, just follow everything, all these different factors. Once we've pronounced the time of death, then as a coroner, we would.
And now you completely gone. You're completely gone for a second there. You said a coroner does what?
The coroner will pronounce the time of death, and then if there is anything that looks like it's suspicious, any markings, perhaps the position of the body, there's a lot of factors that come into play. We then, once the body has, the time of death has been pronounced, we will back up, and then the detectives and the police will take over the crime scene and do what they need to do.
All right.
And so as far as getting the exact, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought there.
Okay, and then of course, if there's anything that looks suspicious, that's when the autopsy is ordered. But if it looks like it was just medical, well, there's many times we'd still order the autopsy, because just because you don't see any markings or any bruising doesn't mean that they still didn't die by the hands of another, or that's where the fluids are drawn for toxicology. But yeah, we do back up, and then the police and the detectives will, like I said, work the crime scene.
All right. Have you ever had anybody that tried to get you to, I guess, to list a cause of death that you thought wasn't true?
Not me personally, no.
Or persuade you, like, I guess, like Hillary's friends corners.
I'm sorry.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we have like we have like a cover up or something like that. I mean, not you personally, but have you heard of like that happening?
Not anybody personally, or anybody that I know that has worked as a coroner. I've read stories about that, whether they're factual or not. I don't know if they were
all right
for a movie.
Anyway, I just
possibly
thought I'd go there for a second, because a lot of times, like if somebody commits suicide, they're not able to collect on the life insurance, right? I think there's a window there or something, like you have to have the insurance for like 5 years or 10 years or something, before
right.
that's ruled like sometimes like oh, this person killed himself, but maybe we can put the cause of death as something else so that they can still get paid, that sort of thing. I mean, does that happen?
I would hope that it doesn't happen, because number one, if somebody is going to someone in law, like the funeral director or the coroner, there's a lot at stake, because if you falsify information, you can go to prison, and it's, I just would hope that everybody is ethical and only out for the best interest of the decedent and the families, that they wouldn't do that for insurance purposes. And even if a coroner misses something that's obvious, you've got your funeral directors. And I've heard of this, where funeral directors will see something that looks a little odd on the body, a marking. Not any cases in our county, but just because I worked at a funeral home at one point in time also. And this was prior to me working at the funeral home, but I do know the owner was telling me that there was a particular case where she, in preparing the body, noticed some things that she pointed out to the police department or the coroner, I don't remember, but because then their reputation is at stake also.
Yeah, a lot of this too comes from, I guess we've all heard the reports of, somebody dying in a, and I understand you haven't been a coroner in quite some time, so you didn't have to deal with any of this this COVID stuff. But there's a lot of situations where people were dying of COVID that were like in a motorcycle accident, or, for some other reason that they died, but because they had COVID or something, they tested positive for COVID. COVID was put down as the cause of death, and I was just wondering, who would be in charge of that? That'd be the coroner.
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. I'm not sure. I mean, it could be the physician that, if it was somebody in a hospital. I that's a hard one to answer. I really don't know.
All right, but you know what I'm talking about. You've heard of this?
Oh, I do. Mm-hmm. Yes, I have.
All right. So let's get on to the real reason why we've got you here. And the real reason why those are some real interesting questions. That was a lot of fun. But the real reason we got you here is because, I mean, obviously you have been to a lot of these scenes, right? Do you have any idea how many exactly that there were?
Well, I do know that I had at least 2,000 cases, which the chief deputy had told me this. This was like a year or so prior to 2015, which is when I was no longer a deputy. A lot of the deaths, though, were hospice, but as far as over the years being out on death investigations, easily I would say 1,000 to 1,500. I mean, that's almost 9 years.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. So let's kind of basically the question is, so before you went on that first case, that first suicide, did you believe in an afterlife or ghosts or spirits or anything like that?
I never was into the terror or the spirits, the ghosts, death. I obviously would read about people talking about, I was always open to it, because I thought, well, I was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
And of course they say when you die, you're going to either go to heaven or hell, right? But you read so many people across the globe that are seeing these spirits and ghosts. I was open to it, but I never really thought much about it prior to being a deputy. Okay,
so I guess the question is, have you ever, what is the, I guess, if you walk into, say it's a murder, have you ever come into a murder that wasn't being looked at as a murder, that maybe the deceased person actually reached out to you and was trying to tell you, hey, I've been murdered?
I personally have not, no.
Okay, so have you had any deceased people reach out to you for anything?
I've had many spirits reach out to me. I was told, because things were happening on the scene and also in my home, and I talked to a couple of mediums, so I was trying to make sense of everything that was going on, and I was told that because I was so kind and compassionate at the scene, that many of the decedents, because these calls that we go, these deaths that we go out on are tragic deaths, right? Most of them are tragic. They're unexpected deaths. And so what I was told was that a lot of these people, they die, they don't realize that they're dead, or they don't know what to do, or they're not ready to go. And so they're hanging around at the scene, and they were watching me, and they would just attach to me and follow me home. A lot of them didn't cross over the threshold, but many of them did cross over and continued to stick around. And not only doing things and saying things to me, but my sons as well. So I couldn't think to myself, I must be losing my mind, because my sons were seeing these things too and experiencing.
Okay, so do you know for sure that they were cases that you worked?
That's the thing. None of them look familiar, but I understand that spirits, they can come back not looking like how they looked on Earth, apparently, because I was trying to figure out, who are these people? Why, I don't recognize them. Of course, then, you go through so many deaths, and there's many of them, of course, that they stand out in your mind, you can visualize, but I think when you get to a point where there's so many deaths that, I don't know if your mind kind of blocks it out. You can't remember every face, but I really did not recognize any of them.
Well, I wouldn't imagine that you would remember every face. I mean, that's quite a few cases. I mean, there's just no way to. Paul Beska, I see your comment there. She keeps cutting out, but I don't understand. That's nothing that we can fix. I guess we're just gonna have to deal with it and roll with it, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I haven't moved since. I'm sitting still. I'm like I'm dead.
All right, so let's go over. So what is the first encounter that you've had with a spirit? Maybe you can tell us that story. It was after you started your job, right?
Yes. Let's see, I'm trying to think which one came first, but I can give you both stories if you're interested. But there was one, for example, that it was a male, and he was probably mid-30s. He had a lot of medical issues, and he passed away unexpectedly in his apartment. He was found on his kitchen floor by who, when you have these caregivers come into your home or their home. And when we arrived, we as in the coroner, the police department was there, and I did what I needed to do, pronounce the time of death, kind of check over the body. And then we needed to notify the next of kin, and we were trying to find who his next of kin were. And one of the officers did give the name of an ex-wife, and so I called the ex-wife, and it was, of course, I gave her the news that he had passed away. And she said to me, "Did you by any chance notice an altar?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I did see a table with some things set up, but I was more focused on the body, right?" And she said, "Well, he was in a Wiccan. I think it's Wiccan or Warlock, Wiccan. And we'd really like to have his skull. We'd like to carve his skull." And I'm repeating this, and the officers are saying, "Oh, no, he can't have the skull." Now, it's my understanding, but I never got into it. I didn't really follow up and research for the next time this question was asked of me, because the police said right out, "No, he can't have his skull. They can't have the skull." So forwarding, I was at the body, and I was going to draw fluids for toxicology. I was going to draw blood. I hunched down, and I was just about ready to insert the needle, and my pager went off. Now, of course, that could have been just coincidence, so I, of course, jumped because I wasn't expecting it. I answered the page. I, stepped away, answered the page, made the phone call. It was another death. Went back to the decedent, bent back down, was just going to insert the needle, and he had an old rotary phone that was on the wall. And do you remember how the rotary phones, how they rang? The loud ring.
Yeah.
Maybe it's before your time, but
no, it's not.
And so just as I was going to insert the needle, the phone started ringing on the wall at a really loud ring, and the lieutenant standing nearest to the phone, we all looked at each other. He grabbed the phone, picked it up, and said, "Hello, hello, hello." There was no one there, so he just kind of, shrugged, put it back on the wall, and I said, "Okay, now I'm going to try this again, but please don't let me, if anything happens, don't let me fall into him." They were chuckling a little bit, and I said, "I wouldn't laugh because he's watching." And they thought I'm sure they thought I was a little off on that too. But so I was just going to insert the needle again. The phone rang again. He picked it up again. "Hello, hello, hello." There's no one on the other end. We looked at each other. He put it back down. At that point, everybody just kind of took a step back. The officers walked away. They went out, towards the patio area. I stepped back. And then as we went back to the body, we just needed a couple of seconds, right? We went back to the body. I was going to draw the fluids. I thought, I want to get this over with. And as I was walking over to the body, one of the officers said, he walked to the head of the decedent, and he picked up a couple of coins, and he said, "Did anybody notice there were coins by his head before? Because I didn't see them." And everybody said, all the officers and myself said, "No, there weren't any coins by his head." Well, he picked those coins up, and then I drew the fluids, and then we stepped away, and we were waiting for the directors, looked back over, and there were more coins by this man's head. And I just felt like he was watching. He was doing this. He was upset that they were kind of chuckling about it because his spirit, his soul was still there. Now, that wasn't scary. It was actually, it was a little scary if you're not expecting, these things. But there was a case of a lady. She was probably in her 70s. She was on oxygen. She lived alone, and she had her machine plugged in. It was storming that particular night, and some young people driving hit a telephone pole, knocked out all of the electricity, so everything had to be done by flashlight. Well, of course, her power went out, and she panicked because she couldn't breathe, and so she called 911. By the time the first responders arrived, they could see through, her doors were locked. She had expired. She was on her chair, her lazy boy. The phone was in her lap. And so then I was paged out and did, pronounced, and we did the investigation. It was medical. There was no foul play. And we did all of this by flashlight. And then you've got the lightning, the thunder and the lightning and the rain, and the only thing that's illuminating the room are your little flashlights. So as we're waiting for the funeral directors, this was maybe about an hour and a half, the officers went out to their squad cars. They were probably doing their paperwork or just waiting for the directors. And I was standing in the kitchen, which was connected to the living room where the decedent was on the floor. And I started to talk to the decedent. Now, I wouldn't have full-out conversations, but I might say to many of the decedents at the scene after the investigation would be completed, I might say, you know, I'm so sorry this happened to you, which is what I'd said to this lady. Let's say her name was Audrey. I said, Audrey, I'm so sorry this happened to you. You must have been so frightened, but I know now that you're in good hands and you're with your guardians, and you don't have to be afraid anymore. And no sooner had I said that, and a grandfather clock chimed several times, and I thought, that's odd, because I'd been there for an hour and a half, and I got my phone, and I saw it was like, let's say 10 after 2 in the morning, so it wasn't like it was on the half hour, the quarter hour, you know, it was an odd time.
Yeah.
And I could feel her in the room, and I thought to myself, that didn't scare me. It made me feel like, oh, you know what? She's here, and she's letting me know that she heard me. And so then another hour went by, and the directors showed up. The clock hadn't chimed. We got her on the gurney. She was zipped up, and just as we were walking out of the front door, the directors were pushing the gurney, and I was behind them. The clock chimed again, and I thought, she's saying goodbye to her house. Everything that happened on the scene, when I do the death investigations, didn't frighten me, but I did have things that were a little bit terrifying for me that would happen at home. So, I mean, I know I'm giving you stories that are, spiritual things where they're hanging around at the death scene, but nothing that really, had my heart pumping. It did, but, it didn't scare the wiki out of me like some of the things that would happen to me when I was in my home.
Okay, so I guess let's talk about some of those. What was the first thing that happened in your house that really scared you?
Well, there was one night when my sons were gone for the weekend. They were in high school, and I had just gotten into bed. And you know how when you get into bed, I'm not one that can fall asleep right away. I have to try to, I think about everything, and I try to push everything out of my mind. So I was laying there, and I just couldn't fall asleep. And how you have that feeling? You feel like somebody's looking at you. You just get that feeling. And you're not alone. And I opened my eyes, and I looked up towards the ceiling, and there was this really mean, ugly, old, angry man's face looking down at me, and the back, it was just the head, and the back was shaped like a sphere. And it was just kind of bobbing and looking down at me, and for a split second I thought, oh my God, somebody broke in, they're going to hurt me. And I quick threw the blankets over my head, and then I thought, well, this is stupid, I have to see what he's going to do. And I brought the sheets back down, and I looked back up, and he was still bobbing, looking at me. Now that did scare me. That was the first time that I'd had a spirit that had actually, I could look at and was looking at me. And it felt like minutes, but it was probably only a matter of, maybe 15 seconds. And it slowly turned, and then he shot off across the room, and it dissipated.
And it was just a head, like a bobbing head. There was no body or nothing, just a head.
Just a head, no body. And the interesting thing is that we eventually moved, and when we were at the new place, it was 3 levels, and my oldest son, he just graduated from high school, and he was going up to the 3rd level to his bedroom, and instead of turning the lights on, he was just going to, probably run upstairs, excuse me, and he told me after the fact, he came down after, he was going up the stairs, and he said there was this really ugly-looking guy that was up at the top. He could just see the face, and I said, well, what did you do? He said, well, I punched him. he punched the face, and then the thing disappeared. And I'm wondering if it was the same one that followed us.
So you think that they're following you from the scene of their death, like to your house, or maybe not even them. It's just that because maybe you're so close to the spiritual realm
Yes.
that you're kind of walking that line between the spirit world and our world.
Well, and I was told by mediums that it was like I was like a portal. I'd opened that up. Now, the spirits, whether they were people from the death investigations that I had that were coming back with looking different, or if it was just spirits were coming my way, I don't know. I don't understand it. I'd love to know more, because I've not been a deputy for 6 years now, since 2015, and I still have things going on. Just like 2 weeks ago, it was, we were having these really high, we still are in different parts of the country, but really hot out, really high temperatures. And
yeah.
Even though I had the AC going on in my bedroom, again, it was at night, I just couldn't fall asleep. I was so hot, and I just couldn't cool off. And so I was facing one direction, towards the right, and I thought, well, you know how you keep moving in different positions. And so I turned to the left, and just as I hadn't fallen asleep yet, so I was wide awake. I turned to my left, and not expecting, but right about by where my hip would be in bed was an old lady, and she had gray hair, and it was about to her shoulder length. And then she had on like an which is so, it's like, oh yeah, that's what you see in the movies. But she had like an off-white gauze outfit on. And as a matter of fact, she caught me off so...
You said, I'm sorry, you said a gauze outfit?
It was like a gauze shawl, or like a nightgowny kind of thing.
Oh, it's not not like a mummy wrapped in gauze or anything.
No, no.
All right.
Like sure.
All right.
And as a matter of fact, it caught me so off guard that I gasped. I didn't scream, but I was like, oh. And then she was gone, and my heart was just pumping, and I thought, oh, here we go. This is where I have the heart attack, But I think it's because it's unexpected. It's terrorizing, because when you're not expecting it, I already am jumpy from some post-traumatic stress through the years of, doing the investigations and seeing as much as I did. So I jumped quite easily, but for these spirits to just show up, obviously unannounced, and I jump, and then it's either I'll quick turn a light on, or I'm out of the room. So it's not like I can calmly look at them and say, what do you want? Who are you? And I think I need to learn how to do that so I can figure out, why am I still having this? There was a case that I'd had several years, again, going back. I was a deputy, and my youngest son, it was in the summertime, and I was at the kitchen stove. I was making dinner. My youngest was like a junior in high school, I think he was, around that age. And he came in the back door. I had a tank top on and shorts, and he said to me, "Who wrote hi on your back?" And I looked over at him like, kind of a smirk, like, what? What are you talking about? And he said, well, somebody wrote hi on your back. I'll take a picture. And he pulled his cell phone out and he took a picture. Now, I still have that picture. It's been transferred through, a few phones, but I still have it. But it was like a nail scratching H and I.
Really?
And I do believe that they're not supposed to touch you. That's crossing the line.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. The good ones don't touch you.
They're not
right?
nice.
Yeah. Let me give a shout out here to Dr. Strangelove for the super chat. Thank you so much. Let me ask you this: Do you feel like before you were having these experiences, like you were having I guess doubts on your faith?
No, because I still believe I was raised Catholic, as I'd mentioned earlier. I still believe in God. I did not falter in my faith. I actually, as a matter of fact, and I still have holy water, and I have, the rosary, and I pray. But I do believe that there are souls that, whether they're confused or they're the unfinished business here, I don't know, but I do believe that we might leave our bodies, but that our soul and our energy will continue on. I absolutely believe that. My mom passed away about 1.5 years ago, and so her last 5, almost 6 months of her life, she moved in with me, and I was her caregiver, and so I was watching as she was actively dying, and the things that watching her eyes, the things that she was saying about loved ones that had passed away, being in that room and the smell of death coming in. I'm talking about before she passed away, like I knew, and this happened many times when I worked in the funeral home. If you've ever smelled death, have you ever smelled it? It's very distinct.
No, I haven't, actually.
Well, once you've smelled it...
I've smelled animals or whatnot, not a human.
Right, it's kind of like a pungent, it's sweet,
Is it
but
the
it's
same?
like pardon me?
Yeah, is it the same as kind of like an animal?
I would say, well, depending on how long, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But, and this smell would come into a room, not just at the funeral home when there wasn't, like in the office that I was working in, but this would start coming into rooms in my home. And it may be there for a matter of seconds, or it could be there for a few minutes, and then it would dissipate and it would be gone. So
right.
Pardon me?
Hang on a second. Let me give a shout out to David. Thanks so much for the super chat. Let me ask you this: do you think that the smell is maybe just something your brain is triggering? You know what I mean?
What would trigger my brain, though? I could be watching TV.
Electrical impulses. Like in the brain that just trigger the memory of a smell. That you know what I mean? Like the brain works in funny ways.
Yes, I know what you're saying, but it would be, like I said, I could be just sitting watching TV, or it wouldn't be like maybe there was food or wafting through a window, or I was making dinner, or, I had a candle going. It would just come in, and that's the same within the funeral home. And I know that others that are in the death industry, I have also in conversations that we'd have, that they would smell it also. And interestingly enough, since my book published in February, people that have read the book that are in the death industry now, of course, many will say, oh, we've never seen anything like that, or that doesn't happen, there's no ghosts or spirits. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of them, if they will admit it. One in particular, for me, a coroner reached out to me, and she's in a southern state, and we were talking about the book, and just being a death investigator, a deputy coroner, which is what she is. And she said to me, and her husband is a police officer. Well, actually, I asked her, I'd said, do you ever have any spirits? Have you ever witnessed any of these things? And she's like, oh my God, do we have the activity? I'm like, oh, tell me about it. Well, every night her husband has to have a fan blowing because, and this has been going on for years, they have a spirit. He can't stand hearing the spirit's footsteps walking down the hall to their bedroom. This is every night. It's every night this is going on for years. And then the spirit goes into their bedroom and then sits down on their bed. Of course, their bed moves down, right? Like there's weight.
Yeah.
And I said to her, well, why don't you have it cleansed or sell the house? I mean, me personally, I think that would be enough for me to be exit stage left. But she said, well, this house that they own, it was her husband's great grandparents, and it was handed down through each generation. And so he doesn't know if it's one of his ancestors. His mom used to sit up till, it always happens every night about 1 o'clock or every morning about 1 o'clock in the morning. His mom used to stay up until about 1 o'clock watching TV or doing whatever she did. board, I don't know, cards. And so he's not sure if it's his mom coming in every night and sitting on their bed. And then I had a forensic technician out of Great Britain who also bought my book, and he said, oh, yeah. He said, we have things flying off the shelves in the morgue all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine if you could talk to any deputy coroner out there, or coroner, or mortician, or anything, they would all believe in some kind of afterlife. You know,
Yes.
I like to think that cats have an afterlife too, and I say this because we put a cat down not too long ago. I think some of my earlier listeners might remember that we had a cat that had that somehow got kidney disease, and just kidneys stopped working, and we had to put down. I think she was like 4 years old, very young. And I swear there are times where I'll be laying in bed, you know, like you're getting ready to fall asleep, and it'll feel like, the feel like when there's a cat walking around on the bed, like when you're trying to sleep. I'll feel that and think that it's our new cat, and I'll look, and there's no cat there at all. But I could swear I can feel the paws walking around on the bed, like the cat is still there.
Absolutely, I absolutely believe you 100%, 150%, because, and again, I keep referring to this, but it's in my book. We had a dog, Chinese Shar-Pei, and he lived to the ripe old age of 13. And he passed away of old age. And a couple of years later, and this is it sounds like I moved a lot, but just a couple of times through the years. But we were at a new home, and doing my corporate travel thing, I was working from home, and I'm at my desk, I'm typing. Now he's been gone, right, for a while. I'm typing at my desk on my computer, and I felt something. I looked down, I had some black slacks on, and there was a hole in my leg, the leg of my pants. It was a little round, about the size of I'd say maybe a quarter. I thought, that's odd. I didn't have a hole there when I put them on this morning, but then, of course, I was a little distracted, and I thought, I've got to continue whatever I was doing. I might have been on with a client on the phone as I'm, working their stuff. And then finished the call, and I looked down at my pants again, and I had several holes in my pants and my leg, that same side, and they were actually wet around. They were all circular and kind of jagged, and they were all wet. Like somebody's mouth was two teeth were on my pants. And at that point, of course, it's like, this isn't making sense, but it's scaring me, because I kept thinking, what if it's a bug or a spider? And I ran to my room, and I, flung the pants off, and there were no bugs or spiders, but I was talking to a medium and showed I have a picture of that. I have two pictures of like the first hole, and then with all the holes. And she said, oh yeah, that was your dog Roscoe. He was just, playing with you. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, why not? Why not have animals that are hanging around or coming back? So they've got souls.
Yeah. It's it's weird to think about, and I've had a lot of, a few dogs as a kid growing up that have passed, and I've never had anything with the dog, but the cats, sure enough with the cats, I've never had any experience with a dog that has passed. So let me ask you this: have you ever been to a medium and tried to talk to the floating head or any of these spirits that have followed you around? Have you ever gotten any word from them exactly what it is that they wanted?
I did go to a psychic / medium back when I had the eye scratched on my back, and he's got a very well-known, great reputation as a psychic medium in the area, and he told me who it was. And it was a case that I'd worked on. It was a young guy. It was a car fatality, drunk driving. And apparently the guy might have been in the room, I guess, when he was doing his reading. But he told me who it was, which was amazing that he could tell me about this particular case. I knew exactly who he was talking about. and he told this guy that he was an a-hole and to leave me alone, which, he never scratched on my back again, so that must have done the trick.
So you never had anybody actually reach out, like, and actually give you clues as to their demise?
Not clues to the demise, but I did have I have a couple of friends that are mediums. They don't advertise it. They just have that gift, and if
those are
they
the
happen
best
to
ones.
read. Pardon me?
Those are the best ones.
Absolutely, because this friend of mine, and she doesn't want people to know, but I mean, don't go around and tell everybody, but if it happens, it happens. But her family and my family were friends when we were younger. Now, I had not talked to her. I didn't even know she was gifted like that. I hadn't seen her or talked to her in probably 30 years or more. And I had a very difficult case that I'd worked. She reached out to me through social media, through Facebook, like that private messaging.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I have someone that keeps giving me these messages. He wants me to pass these messages to you. And I thought, this is very odd at the time, but I was open to listening. I didn't realize she could do this. And she told me things about this particular case that no one would know unless they were on the scene working the investigation. It gave me chills that day because the things that she said were so accurate, down to what he was wearing that day and what I was wearing. And she told, but it wasn't that this is how this happened, because we pretty much through the investigation knew what had happened. And it was a very gory scene. But his message was that, he was thanking me because he knew it was very difficult that day for me to work the investigation, and that he was very thankful and that he was at peace. He was enjoying watching his two grandbabies growing, and a few other things that were more, because I knew his family. I ran into his sons not too long after, and I asked them, because at the time when he passed away, there was never any mention of the grandchildren, or if there were any grandbabies, but by the time this message came through, they'd had a couple of newborns, or young ones, and I told them that a medium had told me that their dad had gone through her, and these were the messages, that he was loving watching his little grandbabies. And these grown men started crying because they both had children. And that was just confirmation right there for me, because there's no way that my friend would know anything about this case. And so that was one that really stood out in my mind, for a spirit to actually reach out to get a message to me to thank me. I thought that was cool.
All right. So we got about 30 minutes left in the show. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask away in the chat room. Put it in caps, and we will get to it. Make sure to hit that like button if you haven't already. We've got a few people in here, and I guess the like button could be hit a few more times by some people. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not. Donna, I suppose, death is always something that's just, it's always on the edge of our minds, right? Have you ever had, I guess, have you gone to many scenes where people have, I guess, suicides would be one of them, but maybe not so much suicide, but a normal death where people kind of put themselves in a good situation to be dealt with, say?
You mean as far as ending their life and
or they knew,
doing it in a way that would help the families?
Or it would help the, I guess, the people that were there, like, not necessarily suicides, but people that maybe knew that they were dying, or, like mm-hmm. Say if I knew I was dying and I was sitting here by myself, I might, put things out on the table that I wanted people to see, or things, things like that.
Well, at least with the cases that I worked, again, you've got the unexpected deaths, right? So most of them didn't plan on dying. If it's a drug overdose, they're, suicide. Well, suicide, of course, whether it's just at a moment, I shouldn't say week, but a moment that they just don't want to live any longer. If there's a suicide note, the police would usually, they'd have possession of that. But I'm trying to think. Most of the cases that I went on, they thought they were going to wake up the next day like everybody else. Although there were a lot of suicides, but the suicides, everyone that I was working, it wasn't like they put anything out to help with the investigation. There was a case that I didn't work the investigation, but I did attend the autopsy, and it was a gentleman. He was a middle-aged man, and he was focused on killing himself. He went out to the woods because of course, I'm thinking he didn't want to do it in his home, make a mess, or he wanted to do it away from people. And he used, I'm not sure of the weapon, but it was and he shot himself in the face.
Wait, I'm
but
sorry.
It didn't kill him.
Can you back up? What happened to his face? You broke up a little bit there.
I'm sorry. He had a weapon, a gun. I don't know what type of a weapon it was. I don't remember, but he shot himself in the face. It didn't kill him instantly, and the poor man shot himself a second time. Now, I don't think that that's very common for someone to be able to shoot themselves twice. I thought that was very sad. But there was another case of an elderly lady that she wanted to end her life. What she did was she tied a rope around her waist and a tree. She went to a river or a lake. She tied a rope around a tree in her waist, and she put all of her identification right by that tree. And whatever she wanted, whomever was going to find her that would help with, her identification and contact information. And then she walked into the river and drowned herself.
Well, that's one way to go, I suppose. I think if I was going to take myself out, I don't know if that's how I would do it, but I guess to each their own, I suppose. Paul Beska wants to know, have you ever encountered any zombie-like experiences? Did you ever go investigate a death, I suppose, and the body would move or maybe even come back to life?
I have not. The only thing that in my career on an investigation I was on working was not like a zombie-like state, but the person had passed away or died in their bathroom, and when they expired, they fell between the toilet and the wall. There wasn't a lot of space in the wall, and it must have been like a cheap wall. I don't know what walls are. It wasn't a solid wall, but his leg went through the wall. So it'd be like a cardboardy kind of wall. Mm-hmm. I don't remember, or whatever you build them with. But his leg went through the wall, and so rigor was already starting to set in. He was a larger man, and I was trying to pull him by the arm to try to get him to move and out between this tight space. And from him laying in that particular position for the period of time that he did, and then trying to pull him, moving him, there was still air trapped in his lungs, and he was like releasing air, like gasping. This was in the beginning of my career, and I turned to one of the officers and I said, "He's dead, right?" And he looked at me and he said, "You're the coroner. You tell me." But I never did have any cases where someone would come back to life other than, or, would there'd be any movement. I did have a call that I was paged out on. We had a lot of drug overdoses in the state that I work or live in, and the county, in the county that I worked in. And of course the Narcan, I should say, that can be given to an overdose victim that will bring them back to life. I was paged out for a P&B, which is a pulseless non-breather, and I was en route to the scene, and the Narcan kicked in, and thankfully before I got there, I was called back, and they'd said, disregard the call. He's sitting up in a lazy boy now. So that's the only coming back to life that I
All right.
experienced her.
How much, I guess the Happy Plague Doctor wants to know, how much is the largest person you processed weigh?
Ooh. And there's a lot of larger people nowadays. I bring that up in the book too. I'm kind of sidetracking, but many people are wanting to be cremated, and I'm sorry, I just wanted to bring this up. And so I had to go to a funeral home for a cremation, and I was looking at the side of the retort, which is where the body goes in, and that's where they burn the body, and it had all this yellow film on the side of the retort. And I asked the funeral director, what is that? And he said, oh, that's fat doesn't burn, and it's causing fires. He said, there's so many people nowadays that are so obese and overweight that the retorts can't handle the bodies, and there's a lot of fires starting. But I'd say the largest that a person decedent that I had
Wait. Let's back up just a second. You said something pretty interesting. So the fat doesn't burn? What is it, like, turn into like a liquid oil?
Yes, it's like a liquid oil, and it goes up the sides of the retort. It must leak out and go up the sides of the retort. It's like a waxy. I didn't touch it. I just saw it. I questioned it. He answered it, and then I had to keep going. I didn't get into a.
They don't clean that up. They just.
Well, that might have happened that day. Maybe he had a crew. I'm sure they do keep them clean. It just so happened at that point in time, maybe there was a body in there at that point when I was walking through, or maybe they just finished. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
I just know it was on the side of their retort, and I wanted to know what that was.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I never really thought of that. That makes a lot of sense. So how large was the biggest person? I mean, you guys. I mean, that's kind of a hard job, I guess. Some people now weigh close to 600 pounds, 500 pounds, 600 pounds. I mean, you've got to move that out of the house, right? I mean that.
Yes, there's men, women, all sizes. Thankfully, obviously I can't do it myself, but thankfully, and many times depended on the case and where we were at and circumstances. The funeral directors would bring a couple of directors, and then I would be able to just, follow. But the majority of the cases, I had to help with carrying the body, and there were many times that you'd be in upstairs apartments, or you'd have to carry. There was a car fatality; it might be out in a field, and you're carrying that body bag, and that's dead weight, literally dead weight.
Yeah. And
you have grown men that you're carrying. Thankfully, when they'd be larger, we would have upwards of, excuse me, there'd be a couple of officers and a couple of funeral directors and myself, so might be 4 or 5 people, but there were many times that there were only 2 of us. And I'm telling you, I had some good muscles at that time. I really got and I'm not laughing, it's not funny. I mean, it's a sad thing, but you're lifting a lot of weight. I would say for me, one of maybe the largest would be maybe around 400 pounds. There have been larger. There was a funeral director, an owner of a funeral home, that had told me that sadly she had a case where it was a male, and I think he was 700 or 800 pounds, and they had to use it. It was embarrassing for the family, but they had to use a crane to get him out of the house.
Wow,
like some
crane.
type of.
Were they had to bring him out of the roof?
I'm not sure. I don't. This was several years ago. I just remember she brought that up, and
wow.
Whether they put him on like a gurney type, makeshift thing, and then it took him out of. I don't know how they do that. I can't imagine they take the roof off. Maybe they had to break down a door and make a larger entryway. I'm not sure how that.
Yeah,
I didn't have any large.
You got to do what you got to do, right? I mean, you got to get the body out of there.
Right.
Oh,
yes.
jeez. Well, Rapnos Raven wants to know, does everybody evacuate their bowels when they die?
No, not all of the cases that I had. Some of it just depends, what if they've eaten, when they've eaten, if they've gone to the bathroom prior to their death. Some of them they didn't defecate. They didn't. There was no urine, so it just all depended on the person. And
Right.
like I said, if they'd eaten, if they digested and gone to the bathroom recently, if they had any urine in their bladder.
All right. Well, that's interesting. I always thought it was everybody, but I guess maybe if you die while you're, holding it or something.
I can tell you there are a lot of cases where people die on the toilet.
Really?
And
A lot?
Yes.
A lot?
A lot. And it's my understanding that if somebody, not all, but potential for someone having any cardiac issues. I'm kind of chuckling because I'm thinking every time I go to the bathroom, it's like, please don't let me die on the toilet. But, if you're having cardiac issues and in your body you start feeling like you have to go to the bathroom, or people go to the bathroom, they haven't defecated, or they hadn't had a number two. I don't know how you want me to say it on your channel, and they're trying to go too hard. They're straining, and they strain their heart, and then they have a heart attack.
Wow, you say it's a lot. Like, wow.
There's a lot of people for me, I had a lot of cases of people on the toilet.
Well, I mean, I've heard of, I guess Elvis, right? That's what happened to him.
I think I was just reading recently, he had like 40 pounds impacted in his bowels. 40 pounds. I don't know how somebody could be that impacted. Well, we've got miles of intestines.
Yeah, that's just insane. David M. wants to know, have you ever encountered or heard of any cases of spontaneous combustion?
No, not of spontaneous combustion. I have had cases where somebody passes away, and again, it depends on the medications they were on, the temperature if it's in a house or wherever, the temperature outside, the temperature of the body. But we're made up of, like 60% of liquid water, and there's been many bodies that have bloated, and we'd have to wear the full hazmat because you could touch it and they pop like a balloon, and then you'd have fluids all over you. So, but never.
Who pops
no
like
one
a
has
balloon?
ever.
The dead people that you get many cases where you touch them and they pop like a balloon. I mean, what is that like?
I haven't where they've popped and, that I've gotten the fluids all over me, because I could see that, I don't know, I'm going to put the hazmat on, but I'm also going to wait for the funeral directors, and then the funeral directors, being the professionals that they are, were the ones that would move the body. I was very careful in looking over and examining the body very gently so that they didn't, for lack of a better word, pop.
Yeah, well, I guess, unfortunately, that's, wow. I guess
it's sad because, pardon me, what's that?
Yeah, that's just, I'm just, that's just, trying to think about that. Hopefully I don't pop. Is it, you have more of a chance of popping, I suppose, the longer you're there, right, I suppose?
Well, some and some don't. Some will more mummify. Some will mummify, and then others will bloat up. And again, like I said, it depends on the condition of the body, the medications they took, how long they've been laying there, the temperature in the room, the temperature in the air, the temperature of the body.
All right.
Of course, the body's cool, but...
Paul Beska wants to know, does the body weigh more after death?
Oh, well, that would probably be a great question for a funeral director who would weigh the decedent once they get to the funeral home. But all I can say is you've got dead weight. So I'm not sure, because if you're bloating up, if a body is bloating, I would think that it would put on weight. that they'd be heavier from the fluids.
Yeah, but I guess
I
the
could be wrong,
fluids
though.
were all originally there anyway, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'd be guessing if I answered that question.
all right. All right. I guess a question we ask all our guests, do you know who Corn Pop is?
Do I know who Corn Pop is?
Yeah.
Corn Pop. Is this a loaded question?
No,
Corn Pop.
It's just something that we do with every guest.
Oh.
Apparently, Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Oh. No, I've never heard of Corn Pop. What did Corn Pop do? Is he in prison or is he dead?
I don't know. I think he was a gangster or something. It has something to, I guess, it's just a joke that we all kind of do with every guest that we have. You'll have to just Google Corn Pop is a bad dude, and I'm sure it'll tell you.
I'm just writing that down. Corn Pop, bad dude. I was only thinking of that cereal, Corn Pop. Corn Pop? Is it Pops or something?
Corn Pops, yeah.
Yeah, I'll look that up. Corn Pop. Yeah, it's interesting.
And myself says, everyone has to answer this question. TK says, Corn Pop is dead. I don't know. Corn Pop is a bad dude. Yeah, but you got to Google it, I guess. It's just kind of a joke we do with all the guests. So, a lot of, I guess it's about half and half. People know who people say Corn Pop is a bad dude.
Did he kill people, or what did he?
I can't say it. You just gotta Google it.
You're not gonna tell me, are you?
No. You just gotta Google it and find out for yourself. I said, Corn Pop is a bad dude. That's all we know about it. All right.
See, now you see what you've done to me. Now from here on in, I'm going to be wanting to ask other people. Gee, have you ever heard of Corn Pop?
Yeah. Who is Corn Pop? Who is Corn Pop? Corn Pop is a bad dude. He's a bad guy. He's bad news. That's all I know. All right. So, well, I guess, have you ever heard from, I guess, what would the percentage be of houses that we see out there, as we're just driving around, that people have actually died in? I mean, it's a lot of houses, right? Like, you would have to think it's a lot of homes, isn't it?
It's a lot of homes, and the thing is, I'm still living in the county. I'm in the county that I worked in, and after all of those years, it's like so many streets I drive down. I'm thinking, yep, I was in that house, and drive by this lake. Yeah, I remember that body there, and just. Yes, there's a lot of bodies, because you figure in our county, and I'd say, I'm guessing, but I think with the surrounding city, it was like around, let's say, I don't know, 70, 80,000, maybe even 100,000 people. And we had, let's see, four deputies at the time when I was working, 4 to 5.
Yeah.
And we'd all take 12 or 24-hour shifts, 48-hour shifts. Now, every 12 hours, your average amount of deaths would be, usually could be 6 or 7 in a shift. That might not seem like a lot, but really when you think about it, it is.
Yeah, I mean...
in one county.
Yeah. People die all the time, right? Just look at your daily obituaries, and that's just the ones that get an obituary. I would imagine that
right.
Probably half the people that die don't even get an obituary.
Well, and I'm only, the number that I'm giving are the ones that were unexpected or suspicious. Then you've got all the regular, not regular, but deaths in hospitals, and well, of course, any home death, a coroner is going to be paged out on because it was at home. But I would say there's a lot of homes that have, or outside of their homes or their cars, people are dying all over every day.
So there's a lot of cars people are driving around too that people have died in, right? I mean, how many cars have you gone to where the car is totally fine, and you pull the body out, and then whoever gets the car just sells it to the next guy, and then somebody's driving around in that car.
Well, that's true. And you just reminded me of a call that I went on, and an investigation we had. It was a young guy. He passed away, and it was nothing suspicious. He just had a lot of medical issues, but he was in the living room, naked, watching TV, and then he was just going to take his medication, and he expired. He sat there all night. I don't know if his roommate or if there was someone else living there. It was a roommate, and I don't know if the roommate didn't come home that night or was already in bed, but the guy wasn't found until the next morning. So he was one that he did lose his bodily function, right? So there's fluids all over the couch. And I drove down that street a couple of days later, and the couch was on the side of the road. And then I drove later that day, and the couch was gone, and I thought, oh my God, I hope no one picked that couch up to take home.
Yeah. Well.
So I've looked at used furniture. I don't look at used furniture anymore, but I used 2 years ago. I think, oh, that's really kind of cool, like in secondhand or thrift shops.
Yeah, like don't ever buy that stuff, right?
No, well, I don't anymore, but after seeing that.
Well, that's a good lesson to learn from a deputy coroner. Don't buy used furniture at the thrift store.
I shouldn't say that. People, I don't want to damage anybody's sales revenue.
No, that's okay. Thank you for the heads up. I wouldn't buy a couch at a thrift store, but I'm sure people do. You need to think about that maybe a little harder before you do something like that, I suppose. Well,
yes, or clean it.
Yeah. I guess, are you still haunted?
I do still have things happening, yes. Like I said, that old lady a couple of weeks ago, and then I was recently driving in my car, and a rotary phone started ringing a couple of times. So things are still happening around me, yes.
Do you use sage in your house and that kind of stuff to cleanse it?
I do have sage, and I actually have the eagle feather, but I've been told that the best saging should be done by, I think, in native or indigenous, I always goof up pronouncing this, a Native American male.
All right.
That's supposed to be the way with an eagle feather for cleansing. I do have the sage though, and I will burn it occasionally, and I have, like I said, the holy water. That's I've got some in my bedroom, because they seem to like to pop in the bedroom. Actually, every room, but I think I need some more staging, and I need someone to help me in directing and how to deal with these spirits, so that they're not always terrifying.
I know somebody. I'll have them send you a message. Cisco,
please do.
Yeah, Cisco, if you're listening, reach out to Donna and help her out. My wife, she sages our place quite a bit here, and we actually even have like some kind of chalk that she uses to draw lines around the door with this chalk stuff.
I've not heard of the chalk, but there was a funeral home owner that told me that they would put lavender around the door frames, and of course I never have mirrors facing a doorway or myself, like in a bedroom. They say you're not supposed to do that, because then that is the portal for the spirits to come through and welcomes them in.
All right. David M says he has a dream catcher over the bed, but it doesn't work. I don't think that it's a dream catcher is not going to help you with spirits. That's for dreams, I think. But I'll have Cisco reach out to you if she's not listening. I'll send her a message. If you need a good cleanse, she can definitely help you with that. Donna, thank you
Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So just look out for Cisco Murdoch on Facebook. She has a Paranormal Portal podcast. I'll have her send you a message if you want to write that number,
Oh,
that name down. That way, you know that that's who it is, and then everybody here knows as well. If you have a problem and you need help cleansing your house, reach out to Cisco Murdoch from the Paranormal Portal podcast, and she can definitely help you out. She's remarkable with that kind of stuff. So.
thank you. And for the ones that think it's pretty awesome for spirits to be popping in and try to delve into that, for as much as my opinion is worth, be careful. It's not something to dabble in if you're not familiar with the things that can happen and what you could be opening up, because it's not all good stuff.
Yeah, that's true. All right,
Yeah.
let's wrap it up. Donna, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, and just so everybody knows, the links are in the description box below. So
Well,
take it
thank you.
away.
I do. My book is I've Seen Dead People, Diary of a Deputy Coroner. It is available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, e-reader, large print, and soon will be in Spanish. I have a couple of Facebook pages. One is, and this was in the very beginning, it's kind of off the cuff. It's not off the cuff, but it's called Delightful Deputy Donna Crazy Coroner with a small C. And then I also have the I've Seen Dead People, Diary of a Deputy Coroner page, which on that page I keep everybody up on interviews. And my book has been written for a screenplay adaptation to a feature film. And so my publisher, who's also he owns Jongler Books, Music and Film, he's going to be producing, and he was the script writer. And Frank Burmaster was the script writer. And then Jeff Ohm will be the producer and director. He's well known in the movie industry and the Hollywood scene. He's worked on films like The Revenant, Fifth Element, Titanic, Shrek, and he's been reaching out to agents for hopefully some A-list actors filling the major roles. So I'm excited about everything that's going on. I've got a great team.
So they're making a movie out of your book. What is it going to be, like a movie about a deputy coroner that gets haunted?
No,
I guess?
it's on the terror genre. Terror.
Oh, okay.
Not horror, but terror.
Oh.
So it's more on the spirits and that not so much just, the deputy job.
Yeah, it's going to be more of a horror movie.
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
Terror.
Awesome. That's awesome. Oh, you must be
Thank
excited. Boy, I would love for somebody to get in touch with me and turn my life into a horror movie. That would just be great.
Well, I'm thinking to myself, wow, my life was a horror movie.
Well,
I lived it.
I'm sure they'll mess around with it a little bit. They'll add their own little dramatics, but it'll be fun. I would love that.
Yes. Thank
That's awesome.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I look
And thank you for having me. It's been my
Definitely.
pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. And just hang on for a minute, and I'll wrap this up, and we'll chat for a second afterwards. I just want to let everybody know you can always find us online. Just go to www.conflictradio.net. You can find us on Apple iTunes, Spreaker, and all of your normal podcast catchers. There's a Discord link in the description box below for the Conflict Radio Discord. If anybody's not on that, you should go check that out. If you have Discord, why not join the group? It's pretty cool. The invite link is in the description, so definitely check that out. That's going to do it for us, guys. Let me look at the calendar real quick and see who we've got for Monday. It looks like we've got Gail Lynn coming on. We're going to talk about frequency healing, so that'll be pretty interesting. And keep in mind, Scott Mitchell on the 22nd is going to be doing open lines call-in with Scott Mitchell. We're going to be talking about UFOs and fallen angels on the 22nd. That's going to be a fascinating show, so definitely check that out. Well, I guess another show in the books, guys. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate all of you. TK, Eddie, a.k.a. Flashback, Paul Beska, Ravi, Sandy, all of you guys, thank you so much for the super chats today. Dr. Strangelove, we'll catch you around. Thank you so much. Remember,